All the attention is on Todd Bowles and the defense, but the offense deserves their share of the blame. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. I would like to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I am your host, James Yarcho, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. We're going to talk more about what strategy the Glazers are likely to use when addressing the failures of this team. And somehow we're talking about how the Bucs still control their own destiny. That is all coming up in a little bit. But today we're going to start off on the offensive side of the ball and some of the issues that we're seeing that go beyond injury. And here's where I stand on that. Many of you know I've said repeatedly that I am not willing to give up on Josh Grizzard as the offensive coordinator. Now, if there's a change at head coach, then Grizzard is probably out anyway, but I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt considering the ridiculous number of injuries to that side of the ball and those injuries being such key players. But here's the thing. What if the players aren't giving him the benefit of the doubt? I was thinking about it a lot over the weekend. I was thinking about the Bucs a lot, just in general over the weekend. And I started remembering some of these situational play calls that we have seen throughout the season. And yes, first and foremost, the players have to execute. But the players aren't going to execute if they don't believe in the play. They're already behind the 8 ball before the ball is even snapped if they're walking up to the line and not thinking that the play will work. And I started thinking about all of this going back to Thursday night. It's 2nd and 14 with 2:24 left in the game, and the Bucs have a 2-point lead, and Grizzard calls a pass play. Now, if that's a good pass to Ibuka and he catches it, then you're in business. The Bucs are going to end up winning that game. However, this is about situational awareness. Why are you calling a pass play in that situation? I understand that you just got stopped for a 4-yard loss on first down, but the Falcons at that stage were out of timeouts. You run the ball and you get it to the 2-minute warning. Now you're likely facing 3rd and long, and guess what? You either run it again or you do a quick pass that probably doesn't pick up the first down unless whoever catches it breaks out and can get yards after the catch. That entire sequence was a disaster class in play calling. Instead of punting it back to the Falcons with about 90 seconds left or even less, you gave it back to them at the 2-minute warning. You gave them an extra 2 to 3 plays by botching the clock management with a pass play on 2nd down. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the defense holds them off long enough to not allow the last-second field goal to be kicked. The Falcons' play calling is likely a little different in that situation. And maybe we're still talking about the Bucs imploding and losing and Kirk Cousins generating this, game-winning drive. But the Falcons ran 9 plays in 1 minute and 49 seconds to win the game. It could have been real different if they only had 1 minute 19 to work with instead. That was just one of the examples that popped in my head. And I started thinking about all the times that they were stuffed for no gain against the New Orleans Saints when they only needed 1 yard. And it wasn't just the game in New Orleans. It happened to them again in the game in Tampa. I started thinking about them being 2 for 8 on 2-point conversions this season, which is the most missed conversions in the NFL in 2025. I started thinking about the short fields that they allowed the Saints to work with because they kept failing on 4th down and turning the ball over. All of this adds up, injuries or no injuries, to a lack of faith in the plays that they're being told to run. Last year, it was nice because Baker was getting 2 and 3 play calls at a time and allowing him to put the offense in the best situation based on what he was reading from the defense. And there are not a lot of quarterbacks out there that are better than Baker at pre-snap reads. This year, it doesn't seem like he's checking into other plays or making changes at the line anywhere close to the clip that he did last year. There are just so many things that have gone wrong for this team. And while I've spent the last 2 weeks ripping the defense, the offense isn't absolved from any blame here. We know Baker isn't playing well. His connection with Ibuka is way off. I talked about it being mental with Ibuka. It might be mental with Baker as well. That because of this disconnect and the drops that Ibuka has suffered, he might be pressing the issue and trying to make every throw perfect. And that's not working out. He's forcing it too much to try to help Ibuka get out of this funk. It isn't happening nearly as often with the other receivers. Even McMillan. J-Mac only had 2 targets, but they were right on the money, and this dude hasn't seen the field since August. But while Baker isn't playing his best and the offensive line is in shambles, you have to wonder if the players believe in what they're doing. You have to wonder if they don't have the confidence that they were exuding last year, that they could just impose their will on any defense, and they always went to the line of scrimmage expecting to win that rep. Now, are they going up there and saying to themselves, God, I hope this works? Or, man, we really need this one? Because if that's the case, if they aren't lining up and thinking this defense doesn't stand a chance right here, then it's over. They've already lost the down. It felt like there were flashes of that confidence early on in the season up until the Detroit game, and they just got absolutely destroyed. They were manhandled. And that, of course, was also the game where they lost Mike. And those two things could be correlated in some fashion. But ever since then, the offense outside of the Buffalo game has been anemic at best. And you're seeing them lose confidence throughout each game. I said it a lot last week. This team looks like a team that's always waiting for the other shoe to drop. They're always waiting for that one thing to go wrong and allow it to snowball out of control. That's not a recipe for success to make the postseason, and it's certainly not a recipe for success to win if you happen to stumble your way into the playoffs. And while I don't see Todd Bowles returning next season, I don't think Grizz would survive a coaching change either. It took until their 3rd crack at it, but it appears that the Bucs finally missed on an OC hire. But look at the bright side. You weren't going to have to worry about some other team stealing him away to be their head coach after this season. And while I do think that Grizzard is a promising coach, I think it might have been too early for him to take on this role. I really do. And you can say what you want about the injuries. You can say what you want about disagreeing with certain play calls, but this is a team that appears to have lost confidence in themselves and in the play calling. That's just what I'm observing at this point. And you still have a chance here, but you have to go out and you have to beat your former offensive coordinator next week. It's tough to watch. It's tough to watch this team fall the way that it has, because it did start off with so much promise and it did start off with so much optimism. History appears on the cusp of repeating itself this offseason once the Glazers sit down to discuss where it all went wrong. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. You can give it to grandparents, parents, newlyweds, out-of-town siblings, anyone who loves photos. Endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. You can add a personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment that it's opened. Packaging comes gift ready with no price tag and no wrapping needed. That's a huge win for people like me that can't wrap gifts. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames. Named #1 by Wirecutter by using promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's AURAFrames.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you're a true diehard Buccaneers fan, the Everydayer All Access tier is built for you. You'll get one-on-one text access with me, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount on the Locked On merch store. Head to lockedonbucks.supercast.com to join the Everydayer Club and unlock all access. You can also find the link in the show notes. All right, if you're like me, a lot of you probably are, you could not wait to get that disgusting taste out of your mouth following the Thursday night loss. So you decided to flip Amazon Prime back on, and you knocked out that Raise the Flags docuseries over there on Prime. First off, it's incredible. It is so well done, so well put together, well directed. It was truly outstanding stuff. I was talking with the insiders about it. And I said, it never, ever, ever fails. Anytime, it doesn't matter how many times I've heard the story, anytime I see Joe Juravicius on my television screen talking about his son, I lose it. I just sob like a baby, because that is one of the most heartbreaking stories that I have ever heard. So of course they talk about that. They talk about everything. I will say I'm kind of surprised at how fast they breezed through the early years and the 80s, but I understood. You wanted to focus on the turnaround under Dungy, the Super Bowl, and the fallout afterwards with Gruden, the decade of despair, then get into the Brady years. That's the real meat and potatoes of this thing. But all that said, as I'm going through and watching this docuseries, it again got me thinking. Like I said, did a lot of thinking about the Bucs over the weekend. Joel and Brian Glazer are extremely prominent throughout this docuseries, and they've had a lot of coaching decisions to make over the years. Malcolm, of course, famously traded for John Gruden, but then once he was fired, it was Raheem Morris, who lasted 3 years. He was fired. Then Greg Schiano lasted 2 years and was fired. Lovie Smith lasted 2 years and was fired. Dirk Cutter lasted 2 years. He got fired. Then you get to Bruce Arians, who lasted 3 years and retired, and now Todd Bowles is in year 4. When you go back, you see that Rich McKay and Gruden didn't work well together, so McKay left, joined Atlanta. The Glazers hired Bruce Allen to be the GM because he and Gruden had a great working relationship in Oakland. And then when they fired the two of them, they promote Mark Dominic to GM, promoted Raheem to head coach. Dominic lasted until 2014 when Lovie Smith was hired. After Lovie was hired, of course, that's when you bring in Jason Licht. And Licht has now had 4 head coaches in his almost 12-year tenure. That's a lot for a GM. Now, we talked about this before. He's only officially hired one of these coaches that he has worked with. Lovie Smith, he didn't hire. Dirk Cutter was promoted. That was a ownership decision so that they wouldn't lose Cutter and they could continue to develop Jameis. Jason did hire Bruce, but then Bruce retires and they promote Todd. That said, this ownership group might look to clean house entirely after the way this season has fallen apart, and I think that would be a mistake. Yes, Jason deserves some of the blame for the roster decisions that have been made, but he is the type of GM that works hand in hand with his coaches to find the best 53 players to execute what the coaches want them to do. So along with the problems that we've seen on the field, Bowles is very hands-on when it comes to picking players to execute his scheme, and that scheme just isn't working anymore. I feel like having to search for a GM and a head coach at this juncture would be the wrong move. Licht has done more than enough to show that he should continue to be exactly where he is. The drafting has improved significantly over his tenure. A lot of the free agent decisions have been good ones. Again, more recently than early on in his tenure. We remember some of the decisions, but that's what he was so good at early on. He would take those risks. He would take those swings on Michael Johnson and Swaggy Baker and Alteron Werner and all of those guys. but there was always an out after 1 year if it didn't work. Now, you can debate the Hassan Reddick signing this year, especially after we all saw the video of him just getting ripped to pieces by Vita and Antoine as they were walking off the field Thursday night. But Jason is the guy that built the roster that attracted Tom Brady. Without Jason building that team, Tom Brady never comes to Tampa. This is a guy that, along with Mike Greenberg, was able to bring that entire Super Bowl team back. This is the guy that, while you were going through cap hell and trying to get out of all of those void years, kept you competitive instead of blowing the whole thing up and rebuilding from scratch. That deserves to be recognized and appreciated. I would have faith in Light to find the right coach to move this team forward. And I'm guessing he would do exactly what he did last time when he actually got to call the shots and hire a head coach. Find an offensive-minded guy. As much as that would destroy my son, who would not see Marcus Freeman running the Bucs and instead maybe heading to the Giants, the window for the Bucs won't be open much longer, not as the team is constructed right now. You can't have the strength of this team be the offense and then have to change offensive coordinators every single year because they keep getting plucked away. You need consistency and continuity there. That's why you hear names like Clint Kubiak or Joe Brady or Adam Stenovich. Those are guys that run successful offenses that would be able to really do something special with the pieces that the Bucs already have. A lot of the top candidates this year are on the defensive side of the ball, and the Bucs are likely going to have one of, if not the most desirable opening, especially for a guy that's offensive minded. So they're going to get a chance to sign one of the biggest names on the market, and we'll get into those as the season ends. I'm not going to do deep dives of coaching candidates while the season is still happening, but here's where I think Jason Licht has made his biggest mistake. We all love the Buccaneer man, the I am that man stuff that has shaped their drafting philosophy, which is why they've gotten guys like Ibuka and Antoine and Tristan and Tyke. But here's where that philosophy can bite you in the butt. You don't have any nasty. You don't have a jerk that they can really light a fire under their teammates while torturing their opponents. The guys that aren't going to be buddy all the time, and they're going to get in your face and they're going to rip you a new one when you're screwing up. It was nice to see, Vita and Antoine trying to hold Reddick accountable, but you don't have that Warren Sapp, Ndamukong Suh, Ryan Jensen level bully, that Aaron Donald attitude. You got a little of it now with JPP, but he's not really putting the fear of anything in any of the opposing teams moving forward. You need that butthead kind of a guy on the defensive side. We all love the Buccaneer man philosophy because it's what has allowed the Bucs to remain as competitive as they've been up until about 6 weeks ago. But you still need that guy that walks on the edge, that really pushes the limits, that gets as close to the line as you can possibly get without going too far over. That's what I think is missing from this team. There's just too many nice guys. And we love the nice guys. Mike, Chris, Baker, Tristan. These are all Antoine. These are all nice guys. But you got to have a jerk or two. You got to have that guy that doesn't take any nonsense from anyone on the field, whether they're wearing the same jersey as him or not. You got to have that kind of dude. So if Jason doesn't want to be closing in on the same fate as so many of the coaches that he has seen during his tenure, he may want to tweak the system just a little bit and bring in a guy or two that plays in that gray area. Might be a free agent, might be a trade, might be in the draft, but they just don't have any grit right now, and they desperately need it. Somehow, some way, the Buccaneers still control their own destiny. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And live betting is best when the game starts to shift. You see a receiver get hot, a defense tightens up, momentum flips after a turnover. There's live spreads and money lines that are adjusted instantly, and player props as guys begin to heat up or cool off. If you're like me and you have to distract yourself from fantasy football now because you inexplicably got eliminated, FanDuel live betting can really perk you up when you start to see some of these games play out the way that they are. I'll tell you what, I had a lot of fun doing some live betting during that Broncos-Packers game because that thing was epic. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, and some people just like to watch the world burn. Those people are the ones playing for the New Orleans Saints, who went out and beat the Panthers in overtime on Sunday, putting the Bucs back in the driver's seat to win the division that apparently nobody wants to win. Here's the situation. The Bucs need to win 2 of their next 3 games. If the Bucs beat Carolina this week and Miami in week 17, they clinch the NFC South. Now, the Bucs could also lose to Carolina this week and still win the NFC South. If Carolina loses to Seattle in week 17, the Bucs beat Carolina in week 18, and Atlanta loses one time, just once. That's where we are. Despite starting 5-1, being 6-2 at the bye week, now sitting at 7-7, the Bucs could still win the division. You guys already know my stance. I understand most of you, because I used to be very much this way. Even as recently as it was Chris Godwin's rookie season, and his first career touchdown catch was to beat the Saints in the final week of the season, and it caused them to drop numerous spots in the draft. And I remember using the Pewter Playing Twitter account, and I said, we don't root for losses. You want to see your team win. You want to see your team make the playoffs. Once you get in, anything can happen. But if they get in and all of a sudden make a run to the NFC Championship, now you're talking about Bowles being back next year. You can't fire a head coach that makes it to the NFC Championship. The Bucs are not going to fire him if he's playing for a chance to go to a Super Bowl. Now, I sincerely doubt that happens. I doubt they get out of the first round if they make the playoffs, considering who they would have to face, but you just never know. That's a risk that you're going to be taking there. I said on my live reaction that for the long-term success of this franchise, it's probably better that they lose out. And I realize I said that in the heat of the moment, but again, did a lot of thinking, and I'm still there. It's going to suck, and it's going to be frustrating in the moment, but you're talking about potentially 5 or 6 draft spots, maybe all the way up to 7 or 8 for the new regime to go get someone that could be a cornerstone player for this franchise for the next decade at edge rusher or linebacker. You're talking about having a better shot to land your TJ Watt, your Trey Hendrickson, your Roquan Smith, your Fred Warner. That's the difference. And it isn't just the first round, it's every round. A higher pick means a better talent pool to choose from. Is it worth it to drop that many spots just to get blown out in your own stadium by the Seahawks or the Bears or the Lions on a Monday night playoff game? I don't think it is. But again, I understand you want to see your team in the playoffs. And now that the Chiefs have been mathematically eliminated, you want your team to extend the NFL's longest playoff streak, active playoff streak. I get all that. Trust me, I do. Because my sons are doing the same thing. We better beat Carolina so that we can still make the playoffs. I get it. I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze in this particular case. This is a team that has an estimated $34.5 million in cap space next year. Estimated. We don't know what the official cap number is. Could be a little more, could be a little less. Now, you only have 41 players under contract, so there is some work that is going to need to be done. But you can do some damage with $34.5 million in cap space. You need to re-sign Mike for sure. I don't think that Mike is going to let this be his final season. He is going to come back, and he's going to come back for the Buccaneers. It's reached the Levante David level. Mike is probably going to be on a year-to-year, contract with him making the decision whether or not he wants to play. They'll get the money figured out. It's not a problem. I do think Levante is gone. I think he retires. You can go get a marquee name for the next couple of years on the defensive side of the ball with that kind of money in free agency. You can go out there. You can bring back guys like Kendall Vildor and Deion Jones and Dan Feeney. Players like that will be cheap, reliable depth. You need those guys. Deion Jones, he just started Thursday night. Kendall Vildor, he was out there playing when McCollum went down. He's good on special teams. Those are the kinds of guys that you still need. But a lot of these players can walk, and it's not going to kill the Bucs. I'd like to see them bring back Jamel Dean. He might have played his way out of their budget. We're going to get 3 weeks of Benjamin Morrison being a full-time starter, so we'll see how he does. But next year, there's going to be a new defensive scheme, so he's going to have to learn something new anyway. But you can go out there in free agency, and you can sign Trey Hendrickson. You can sign Al-Qadim Muhammad. You could get Alex Anzalone or Quay Walker or Caden Ellis to shore up one of your inside linebacker spots because Voss ain't it. Deion Jones ain't it. Levante, again, I think he retires. You can help this team in free agency, but you can help them in the draft by not having to pick around the 20s again. As it stands right now, the Buccaneers are projected to pick at 19. Carolina is at 16. If the Bucs end up finishing 7-10, if they lose their next 3 games, that'll put them in the range of around picks 11 to 14, where you have Kansas right now. You have Kansas City, who has lost Mahomes for the rest of this year and part of next year. You have the Vikings, who are not going away. They are not phoning it in, nothing. You have the Dolphins, who would automatically drop behind Tampa if they beat Tampa. And then you have Dallas, who is still in the running for a playoff spot. So you're talking about right now picking at 19, you can almost jump all the way to the top 10 if you lose these next 3 games. And I've reached a point where I try to view things for both the long and the short term when it comes to this franchise. Short term, they had the talent coming into the season, but they don't have the health or the coaching to win a Super Bowl. So let Bowles finish the collapse that he started, and then next year, and for the next 4 years, come away with a potentially more impactful draft class of hopefully at least 1 or 2 cornerstone players. And then at least for next year, you don't have to play a first place schedule. You already have to go against the AFC North and the NFC North next season. So you have the Packers, Bears, Vikings, the Lions again, the Bengals, the Browns, the Steelers, and the Ravens. Let's not add the Eagles and Rams on top of that. Instead, you'll get the Cowboys and probably the Seahawks or maybe the Niners. And then you'll get the Chargers instead of the Broncos because you have one AFC West opponent. The Bucs schedule next year is brutal, and you are going to need all the help that you can get. It starts with whoever the new head coach is. It starts with whoever they bring in at defensive coordinator, but then you have got to hit free agency hard, and you have got to make a splash before going into the draft. The free agents will help you in the short term. That draft class will help you in the long term. Thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Bucs. We will have more coming up tomorrow about this loss, about how the Bucs can handle moving forward. But Make sure that you subscribe and follow Locked On Bucs so that you get all the latest episodes. You can follow on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Bucs in both of those places. Every day or all access, guys. Lots of extra content is going to be rolling out. We have all access episodes. We have newsletters, discount at the merch store, lockedonbucs.supercast.com. If you just want to be an insider, we're still doing the insider stuff. We're still doing the one-on-one texting. Go to joinsubtext.com/lockedonbucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.